Alright, in this episode we're going to be fixing some of the inaccuracies and adding some detail to the hood of this dozer. Alright, so let's do it. Alright, so that part is done. The next thing to do is smooth out the top of this so that it's flush like this, so that we can attach the polystyrene. And for that part, I think I'll use a combination of the wheel and the belt. Alright, so the paint has been stripped off, and the next thing I've done is drilled the holes out a little bit bigger here where the various intakes and exhausts are going to go, so it's big enough to run this tube through that I'm going to use for the exhaust piping. Just using a really rough grit sandpaper here, and I'm just going in a crosshatch sort of fashion. Not trying to smooth this out. Not trying to do a really detailed sanding job here. I'm just trying to create some mild little valleys here in an otherwise relatively smooth surface to give the glue just a little bit more retention. I'm sure it'd be fine without, but might as well give it a touchy touch. And I will go over this with rubbing alcohol before I glue it, because when you go and you start rubbing your fingers on there, you leave oil on it. Alright, so that should be sufficient. So it feels relatively rough. It's much rougher than this one.
Me, tough guy, huh? Rough you up.
Glue. Actually, I'm going to glue this. Alright. Oh, it's going to be a good bond. It's going to be a real good bond, man. I'm doing my glue. I like to go around the edge. So a pretty good bond that way. Which isn't going to be a huge deal because I'm coming back with filler anyways, but do a little zigzag pattern down the middle. Don't need to paint the whole thing down with it. Make sure the side that you intend to glue is down. Your corners are lined up. Again, if you get this stuff on your fingers or you glue your fingers to your project, it's not the end of the world. It really is not. Where you get yourself in trouble with super glue is when you take and put it all over your hands like it's lotion and then glue your hands together. And no, I have not done that. I'm dumb, but I'm not that kind of dumb. I have gotten it in my eye though. I think I told you guys that story. All right. Now I'm not going to glue the front piece down yet. Or am I? Actually, I am. I gotta shape it first though. Or do I need to? No. Yes? Yes. But I need to create the piece that goes down in there. Alright, so here's the final result. No, I'm just kidding, this isn't the final result. We still have to drill the holes through, but I got all the plastic in place, and now we're going to go around all the edges and smooth everything up, line it up, and use the sander, and I'm going to use some files. Should be good. Got some contours and stuff to work with here, but it's coming along well. Slide the grill in place so you can see how that fits in, and then I'll probably cut another little piece of trim to close that up down there. But it'll make more sense once it comes together. Alright, so I've had a little epiphany here, and that epiphany was that I don't feel like doing a bunch of priming, sanding, 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 priming, sanding. So I've decided to cheat and just cover the side with a piece of brass. I think this is a great option. The other concern that I had was drilling into this. If I drill into spots that have putty in it for my rails, it's not going to get a very good retention. And I also wanted to raise this line a little bit so that I can raise the grills just a bit. So this was my solution, and it came out great. To get this to stick really well, just roughed it up really rough with sandpaper on both the model and the piece of brass that I put down there. Put it on and just kind of sanded everything into shape. And it came out good. This is that really thin shim material that I've been using, and I'm liking it a lot. I drilled out the holes on the top. We have the holes for the exhaust, holes for the air intake. For the air intake, I just took and cut down the ones that came with the model. Some of the end models have air intakes that sit a little bit lower. I'm not sure why. Maybe it's just a different generation, different type of air intake. But I kind of think it looks cool, that little bit lower flush look. So I'm going to use that style for both of these. And then these are those two little holes that I was talking about earlier, where you would access the fill or cap for the, I think one is for engine oil and the other is for radiator fluid. Correct me if I'm wrong. And that is about the extent of the details for the top there. I do need to add two little, there's like these little half cone things that are right here on the hood where the hydraulics come out. We'll work on those later. Getting to the side, I did end up filling one of those steps because the end model only has one side step that goes in where the rail goes. So I'm going to cover that with a piece of brass, and then on that piece of brass I will solder on all my grab rails that go in. So what I'm working on now is going to be the exhaust pipes, one of my favorite things to do. I don't know why, I just really like making brass exhaust pipes. They're going to be about 22 millimeters long, sticking out of the top of the hood. I feel a little shaky because I had a lot of coffee this morning. And they kind of want to tilt forward, so in order to keep them positioned back, I'm going to put a little block down inside there to kind of hold this forwards. And let's see, let me grab one of the old exhausts. So these are the old ones that came with the model. Not a whole lot of detail here. And it's that like flap top style. It looks like a teacup or a tea kettle and a little teapot, short and stout. And so I figured out how to make that out of brass. And this kind of stuff is cool. So I have this little shim that drops on the outside, not shim, collar. And then I took and punched out a little disc and then cut this little fin, and it will all go together like that, and drill a tiny hole in there, put a little pin in there, and then you get openy, closey top. Alright, so when I was looking at pictures of the exhaust on my computer and then looking at the little prototype that I made, I realized that I had intended on making it a little bit different. Now I made this little prototype probably a few months ago. So I kind of forgot some of the things that I was going to do to it, but I have made some slight changes to it, and it actually makes for better detail. So as you can see, I actually kind of cut the collar down to about 1.5 millimeters, and blow some of the schmutz off here. You can see that it kind of raises up on the back. That's how they look on the full-size ones as well, and that's why the back of this little piece was so short, because it was supposed to fit in like that. So it creates a little bit of a limiter so it doesn't open up all the way and flip over to the back. But that's almost done. Just got some more cleaning up to do. Punch the hole in it, but it's looking good. I'm going to probably round out that little curve right there to make it come up, but all I did was put the collar on and then ground it down a bit. Still got some more filing and grinding to do on this one so that it lines up to be the same size as this guy. But yeah, they're coming along great. I'm really pleased with this. Haha! It is done. Brad. Hold cold, buddy. It works. It's kind of firm, which is actually kind of cool because you could hose it open. But yeah, man, I am stoked on this. Here's the other one. I haven't drilled it yet, put it together, but one is done so far. Doesn't look too. I was afraid it was gonna look out of scale, but that looks pretty good. Pretty happy with that. The other one, it's gonna be. I'm either gonna do like curved pipe, which I'm not sure if I can bend this stuff, curve it without it collapsing, or I might just do like an angle. We'll see. Alright, next I'm going to show you guys how to make your basic standard issue angled exhaust pipe. That's the one that goes out and then shoots over to the side. So you're going to need 2 sizes of brass tubing. Most brass tubings fit into one another if they're like a 0.5 millimeter off. So for example here, I have a 3.5 millimeter tube and the 3 millimeter tube fits inside it. Set the smaller one off to the side and take your larger one and utilize something that can cut angles. I'm going to use a miter box that has cross cuts in it. Most miter boxes have multiple angles of cut. This one right here is a 45-degree angle, and then this one looks to be about a 35-degree angle. I'm going to use the 35-degree angle. You can use whichever one you want. It dictates how much of a slope or diagonal the top piece of the exhaust pipe comes off at. So the first thing we're going to do is, we have a flat end here. There's not going to be any flat ends on the exhaust pipe, so I got to cut my first angle into that. Gotta hold it in place or else it's going to want to roll, but once you get your cut started on it, then it gets a little bit easier. The saw that I'm using is a 32 teeth per inch saw. This probably would work a lot better if I had like a 42, but that's all I got to work with. It cuts just fine, but it makes for a kind of rough cut. Those are like a couple passes. We got our first angle cut in. Just take a look across it. They sell a vise that holds like pipe at an angle so you can file it flat. If you have one of those, good for you. I wish I had one. They're kind of expensive, but it's a nice way to clean the top of this off. Alright, so we have our first part done. Now comes the time to measure. Figure out how long, because this part that we're cutting is going to be the short angle on the top of the exhaust pipe. Figure out how long you want that to be. I'm going to step off screen for a second and figure out how long I want this to be, because I didn't do that before starting filming. I'm utilizing the short end of this because we're going to cut another angle in the opposite direction. So I've utilized the inside here. Mine, I'm just making up the measurements. I'm taking a little bit of a creative liberty on my SoCal style D11 because I'm going to do angle pipes on it instead of the flappy pipes like this. Just wanted to make it look a little bit different. And also I'm lazy and I don't feel like making 2 more of these, but I wanted to have a little bit more distinction between the 2 models. So I'm going to line my mark up with the little point on the miter box here. Make sure I got it level. And again, I'm doing the 35 millimeter or the 35 degree angle on this one, but if you want more rake or pitch on the end of that pipe, you can do 45 degree, make it slope over a little bit more. Alright, so the first portion is cut off here. And because I've already cut that angle, the rest of my work is done. I just need to cut it off there. And as you can see, the two pieces will fit together like that. And bada bing, you've got your angle pipe. Now, where does the smaller piece of pipe fall into that? Well, what I'm going to do is cut a small section of that, and then it's going to slide down inside here, and only about 1/2 millimeter of it is going to stick out. Now the reason that is there is to add a little bit of a foothold for this to clip onto to hold it in place so that I can solder it. Now you don't have to do that. If you want, you can just wing it without, but I like having that there because it gives me a little bit of something that I can drop a little solder down on the inside if I want as well, and just give it 2 points of contact for soldering so I don't accidentally bump it, knock it off. Because if you're just trying to solder that right there without any additional support, it's going to make for a weaker joint. So it just gives you a little bit of extra strength. Alright, so we got our larger lower piece, and then we have that little tiny piece of the 3 mil that's going to slip in here. Again, this just acts as like a little retention point. You don't have to use this if you don't want to. Just drop it down in so that just a little bit of it is sticking out, and that kind of acts as a little foothold for your other piece to grab hold of for when you rig it up to solder it. You can also glue it if you want. If you don't have the ability to solder, you can just glue this piece in, then apply some super glue there, and then lock it on place that way. Alright, so soldered and cleaned up, we have 2 exhaust pipes here. So we'll have 2 different types. They'll fit into the hood. I'll probably put them in at like an angle facing outwards a little bit. Figure you'd want the exhaust to blow out and away from the cab, and then they'll actually sit up a little higher than the cab as well. So they're kind of cool. A little bit different. Plus we don't get a lot of rain in Southern California, so don't have to worry about rain getting down the exhaust pipes. I can throw a bucket over it. Alright, so right now I'm working on these little shrouds that are going to go on the hood. That's where the hydraulic lines run out to the forward hydraulics that raise and lower the blade. So I'm going to show you guys quickly the little steps that I'm going through to make these. The shrouds are kind of a complex shape. They look like this, and then they're flared out on the bottom, so this is it in like the halfway form. But what I did was I started it with, I got some material. It's like a really expensive material. It's called scrap cardboard. It's actually not really expensive. It's hopefully not expensive wherever you're from. But yeah, just some scrap cardboard from a product that I bought. I like it though, especially when it's like this laminated cardboard, because it's rigid, but you can bend it and it'll kind of keep a shape. So I used that to kind of eyeball and rough out what I thought my finished result needed to look like, so that I can fold it all out and then get the shape that I need for cutting it out of brass. So this is it after a lot of trimming and shaping, and then here is the plain brass piece flat, and then it's kind of like origami, you fold it into shape. So here's me starting to bend the hood into shape. Now the very last step of this, as you can see, was to flare out the bottom. So we have that, and now I've flared out the bottom of it. Now these edges are going to get cut way back. There's only going to be The wing parts are going to be about 1 millimeter long each. Alright, have finished the hydraulic hose guides on the dozer. So you can see here's that top little, we'll get you some lighter background. So you can see there's the lighter little hood right there, then that plate that I soldered it to, and then I soldered this tube to the bottom of it. And the reason for that is to give it some retention when it's attached to the hood of the dozer. It then also creates a channel for me to run the hydraulic hose through. So it comes out here and then it gets piped into the back of the hydraulic cylinders themselves. I think, I haven't looked at many other dozers to look for this piece, but I think the D11 might be the only dozer that has this. The D10N might, but I think it's kind of a D11 exclusive thing. The D10, some people call it the D10L, but the D10 that came out before the D11N did not. It just had the hoses run straight out. So I'm not sure why they created these shrouds. I guess they might have been having issues with the hoses getting damaged. But I mean, unless you're a really bad operator, you shouldn't have material coming up and over to the point where it's falling on the hood of the machine. Alright, so I have finished all the railings and everything for the hood unit. Here's just a basic mock-up of the whole thing. But as I was saying earlier, the rails that are on this side of it are a little bit different than the ones that are on the other side, as you can see. I used a piece of the base, and then I surrounded it with some new brass, and then just soldered up all the new brass rail for that. Sorry, it's early in the morning. I just got up. Thought I'd get some of this in before everybody else in the house gets up. Oh, what fell out? Oh yeah, these guys. And then I made these little, just little mock filler caps that go inside there. And then the new grab rails on the side. These will get pushed in a little bit more. They're just mocked up right now. And then you can see the new mesh that I put on the side. Get a better look at it. And I put little 0.5 millimeter brass in there to kind of act as like the studs. Came up pretty good. Painting this is going to be a little bit tricky because I don't want to install this and then paint it, because the mesh is so fine that the paint would just fill it up, and then it would take a lot of detail away. So what I'm going to have to do first is probably mask this out. I might just leave it this color, and then when I glue the painted screen, which I'll airbrush off of the model on, it should add some simulated depth because it's got the darker color behind the mesh, so it should make it look a little bit deeper. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there. And other than that, we're done with the hoods, so we'll get moving on to the next part of the project in the next episode, which is going to be all the dozer blades and stuff like that, where we're going to take these and drill all the stuff out, and then I'm going to be making a whole push blade setup from scratch. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the episode, and we'll see each other next time.